The Xbox had RPGs, seriously. It's no secret the PlayStation 2 was RPG king this generation, but the mean green Microsoft machine still had a few RPGs on it, probably more than you anticipated. In discovering and playing some Xbox RPGs, I chose some that I was interested in and took some suggestions I heard from you all to begin this part of my journey. This time I'm going to share these games in the order that I enjoyed the most to the least. Weird, right? Let's get started. Fable. Fable really set itself up for success and subsequently kinda set itself up for failure. That's my understanding. I mean, they sought to deliver a lot, and so it arrived under the weight of massive expectations. That's not, really strange when you consider the industry. Sometimes we see folks overcommit and underperform and, tale as old as time. But this game is still great. Peter Molyneux and Lionhead Studios had promised a living, reactive world where every choice shaped your character's destiny, and even the land around you. And while the game didn't quite hit that huge target, that's a mythical height, the experience still delivered one of the most unique and memorable action RPGs I had ever played at the time. In Fable, you play as a boy from the quaint village of Oakvale, whose life is shattered by a bandit attack. Dang, that happens pretty often in RPGs, doesn't it? From there, you're taken in by the Heroes Guild and molded into what becomes a sort of warrior, mage, or rogue, or some hybrid you create along the way. You don't quite choose a class, but you build one. And that's part of the magic of this game. Your characters sort of physically manifest your morality. You do good and you sprout a halo, glowing skin, and butterflies. Do evil and you grow horns, creepy eyes, and a menacing aura. It really blew my mind the first time I saw it, and I wanted that halo real bad. Whereas my roommate at the time in college who was also playing this was dead set on getting them horns. The morality system is pretty simple by today's standards, but in 2004 it felt so insanely impressive. You could help townsfolk do their, things, or you could chase chickens, help the people or hurt the people. Hey, that's your choice. Again, in a world of Skyrim and Fallout, this isn't as impressive, but back then, again, talk about crazy autonomy. Town reactions reflected your choices, and while many mechanics were binary, the illusion of freedom was powerful. It felt so much more nuanced than it really was. Something neat and further is that the game didn't lecture you. It let you be a savior, a scoundrel, or something a little more messy in between. Combat leaned into accessibility rather than complexity, and replaying for content was a delight in finding that, hey, this game's still fun. Swordplay feels weighty, ranged attacks are satisfying, and magic abilities are still my bread and butter. Just blast everything backwards and then chop down what you want. All this takes place without too much menu fatigue as well, and I appreciate that. The experience point system split into general XP and other pools tied to combat methods, strength, will, and skill. This encourages you to experiment with your character. Whatever you like doing, hey, keep it up. You could be a towering warrior with lightning fists or a gaunt spellcaster who barely touches a blade. And both, I think, are equally effective. Visually, Fable has a style that's appropriate and fits well rather than going for that hyper-realism look. And I think this was the move. It has the staples for RPGs with forests and villages, caves, the stuff, standard stuff, but it looks really good, it looks solid. The exaggerated character designs are akin to storybook fantasy, I guess. Because of this, the art direction aged better than many of its contemporaries that chased that hyper-realism. The British voice acting still cracks me up.
Very well, hero. Do your worst. I am no defenseless old man. I have powers that you can't begin to...
It has some great dry humor, and the quirky NPC chatter gives Albion, the world, a great sense of personality. The game can be pretty silly at one moment and impressively dramatic the next, and that tonal flip-flop and flexibility help define Fable's identity. Story-wise, Fable is fairly straightforward. Avenge your family, unravel a conspiracy, confront your nemesis. I don't really want to spoil anything, but it's enough of a vehicle to get you rolling. It's tropey, hey, but it's enjoyable. I think what really makes it work is that the world of Albion is just so enjoyable. The NPCs are legitimately enjoyable to talk to or hear from. The pacing, this colorful supporting cast, and the freedom to roleplay within the story is the better part of it. The story sort of takes a backseat, which I don't particularly mind. The gameplay is so solid, especially in the context of the world, that it's difficult not to forgive any slights. While the world feels segmented rather than open world by modern standards, areas still feel alive with side quests, secrets, and optional choices that reward exploration. Again, Albion's just fun to explore. Looking back, the biggest criticism is that many of the grand promises, like trees growing from planted acorns or complex world-shifting consequences, never really fully materialized. I'm not as familiar with the explicit promises as I wasn't invested in gaming news at the time, but I hear pretty often from folks that the claims were huge and the payoff was, less. Maybe that's why I had no trouble enjoying this game. I had no promises made to me, and so I didn't have much to expect. I just enjoyed it. Fable ended up less of a revolution and more of a prototype for modern morality-driven RPGs. Hey, and I think that's solid enough, for real. It struck a balance between whimsy and consequence that few games attempted at this time. For this experience, I played the Anniversary Edition of Fable on Game Pass. This is apparently the way to go as it expands the scope, but even the original release is worth playing as it'll likely leave you with a lasting impression. It's imperfect, but Fable helped define the identity of Western console RPGs in the early 2000s. It still works too, proven by the charm, choice, and humor that is woven together extremely well. Fable is just a solid game. Maybe it's because the internet didn't tell me to not enjoy it or whatever. I wasn't listening at that time. I remember renting this game when it first came out from one of the last video stores in the area. I actually missed a few days of class in college to play it. It felt like to me the next generation of RPG at work. Well, now you know that this is the game I enjoy the most out of this list. So which game kind of fell a little short of getting that top spot? What were the problems? The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind came out in 2002 for the Xbox, and it crammed a full-blown PC world into a console, quite effectively, by my understanding. The game is much larger than one might expect. It's non-linear and deeply unconventional. Maybe you've heard the phrase, facts don't care about your feelings. No, Morrowind doesn't care about your feelings. It's a stark contrast to the more guided experiences typical and expected of the time. There's no quest markers, there's no hand-holding, and no illusion of freedom. It really is freedom, whether you're ready for it or not. You awaken as a prisoner released by imperial decree on the island of Vardenfell, a volcanic land crawling with ash storms, alien wildlife, and arcane politics. This feels very much like the opening of Elder Scrolls 4 for me, but hey, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just not deeply rooted enough in the lore of these games to understand why they're so different, but it feels similar. From there, the game lets you choose a name, gives you a vague sense of importance, and then politely boots your baby bird butt into the world to figure it out. The open-endedness is the soul of Morrowind and, what I would argue, is true role-playing. I happen to be playing the role of Catman, who gets ruthlessly murdered in every random cave that he enters. I mean, the game is about choice. You can follow the main story about the prophecy and the god Dagoth-Ur, or completely ignore it and become a thief, a Mage Guild operative, which I ended up being for a little bit, a Teovani lord, or some cliff racer-hating nomad who just hoards glass armor. On Xbox, the game was undeniably rough around the edges, but it was also groundbreaking. Again, it pushed this entire PC game into this console. The sheer scale of the world, full towns, factions with their own questlines, Daedric ruins, and mushroom towers was unlike anything console players had seen. Draw distance fog was thick, maybe not as thick as N64 fog, but still thick. Load doors were frequent and frame rate drops were pretty common, but the trade-off was a world that felt lived in, rather than just copy-pasted environments. Most importantly is the weird freaking movements of these characters and the flapping of their heads like South Park Canadians. I love it. It's just a little dash of jank there. What's that game called? You know, come to think of it, this game kind of reminds me of Aiden Chronicles. It's like the polish for Aiden Chronicles, because that game is also huge. Combat and progression are classic Western RPG design. You swing your sword or cast a spell, and whether you hit often depends more on your character's stats than your aim. I had a lot of people in Discord warning me, figure out how the stats work and how the swings work, or you're going to be really frustrated with the combat. I get it, you just miss a lot. Actually, let's do a quick Google. Why do I miss so much in Morrowind? This game is definitely, obviously rolling the dice behind the scenes, and in the beginning, your dice suck. Your modifiers suck. Spells can backfire, you miss pretty daggone often, and things just don't work sometimes. With this, skills only improve if you actively use them. That friction frustrated some players, and I think that's why people were telling me in Discord so often. Because people are used to this instant responsiveness from video games, right? But those who embraced it found a role-playing system that rewarded identity and commitment. I mean, you're probably familiar with this from later Bethesda games, right? Or maybe think Final Fantasy II. Use it or lose it, sister. You want to be a magician? You better practice those fireballs. Being bad at something in Morrowind isn't a flaw in the game or you. It's just the appropriate starting point of your story. You're a failure. An impressive note about the world is that it's just strange from what I've seen. Vardenfell isn't medieval Europe with dragons, it's more about weird landscapes and people doing unconventional things by our understanding. But things make perfect sense for world building. The Dunmer culture, tribunal religion, and ash-blasted landscapes make the setting feel, unique is the nice word, but alien might be the more appropriate one. In designing this game, medieval Europe would have been probably a lot easier, but they didn't do that.
Nice.
The music in this game, just like other Elder Scrolls games, is super solid. It's so cool to be walking down the path or whatever and hear the music swell up that you recognize from the Elder Scrolls. Jeremy Soul's score blended melancholy with mystery, and with in-game books, journals, and dialogue, it all gave the world a sense of history and philosophy that you could absorb at your own pace. And hey, there's a lot of it. I mean, according to the website, it says that it takes so many hours to beat it, but completion will take you a long time. I think to beat the game, it's just 40-something odd hours according to howlongtobeat.com. But you'd really have to kind of like skim the surface of quests and stuff and just ignore a lot of the lore, because that's going to take hours and hours and hours to get through all that stuff. Looking back, the Xbox port of this game is akin to that Bumblebee scene. Its wings shouldn't work, but it flies because it must. The game isn't even close to perfect, but it's impressive that it works at all. It introduced a generation of console players to the idea that an RPG didn't need to funnel you from dungeon to cutscene, which, honestly, I don't mind. But Morrowind lets you get lost, fail, steal, fly, read forbidden tomes, or murder a god. It felt limitless in a way that games seldom did at the time, and limitless unlike many games do anymore. I appreciate the hand-holding I get in a lot of games nowadays. I'm kind of conditioned to that at this point, but it's frustrating when you have to eke out every single bit of success with 1,000 rounds of failure. But buddy, when you do succeed, it feels good. Today, its design philosophy still stands apart. Morrowind didn't care what kind of hero you were. It says good luck, right? It just handed you the world and said, figure it out, big boy. To be honest, I didn't really enjoy it at all when I first started playing, because it's just, you really do have to eke out success along the way. At one point, I found myself going, I need to stop playing, and I didn't want to. The real question now in the video is, where is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, right? I mean, Morrowind over that? Surely not. But folks, as janky as Morrowind might be, if you've played it, you probably understand where I'm coming from here. It's much better than I anticipated it being. So how about that KOTOR, right? Wrong. Jade Empire. When Jade Empire came out in 2005, it was an Xbox exclusive. It was a shift in development for BioWare. After successes like, hey, KOTOR, Baldur's Gate, and Neverwinter Nights, all based on D&D and Star Wars, they decided to create an original world inspired by Chinese mythology. A project that was a dream for the heads of the company for years. The result is an action RPG that is familiar and experimental. Its presentation is stylish and memorable, innovating on the systems from the previous games in terms of combat, but still enjoying the morality system. You start the game as a martial arts student in the remote Two Rivers school, not knowing that your destiny is tied to a mysterious force jockeying for power and another force trying to maintain power. The narrative bleeds BioWare. It's a humble protagonist, a teacher with a hidden past, a looming threat, and a world waiting for your choices. Jade Empire jumped hard into Eastern philosophy and aesthetics and managed to do so without turning them into some kind of weird parody. Now granted, I'm just a hillbilly from Appalachia, but my magic box here tells me that it's really respectful of the source material. And that's the way we like it. No hate in our holler. The game's moral system, the way of the open palm and the way of the closed fist, is slightly more nuanced than just good versus evil. Open palm focuses on helping others, while closed fist focuses on self. Closed fist wasn't always cruel, and open palm wasn't always goody two-shoes. It's a game with something to say about philosophy, control, and consequence, and I love that. Combat is where Jade Empire is different from BioWare's earlier works. Instead of turn-based mechanics, the game uses real-time, like full-on real-time, not that halfway stuff KOTOR was doing. The combat is single-character martial arts. You swap between stances, fast fists, heady weapons, magic styles, and transformation forms while dodging, striking, and timing blocks. Though its depth isn't on par with character action games like Devil May Cry, the accessibility and rhythm gives battles a cinematic feeling. Watching your character flip, parry, and unleash a flaming palm strike on corrupted spirits feels satisfying, and hey, it's fun to do. I like quite a bit about this game, but the combat was the first thing that made me say, okay, I see you. Companions are pretty important in this game, as you'd expect from BioWare. Characters like Dawnstar, Silk Fox, Black Whirlwind, Henpecked Hoe, and the Sagacious Zoo brim with personality and humor and bring tension to the story. Their designs are colorful, their writing is surprisingly sharp, and while romance options are limited compared to later BioWare titles, dialogue and loyalty still matter. You can definitely be rizzing these characters up, as the kids say, or as they used to say. I'm not sure anymore if that's a thing.
I used to be with it. But then they changed what it was.
You don't directly control your companions in combat really, but their presence and goading can change story routes and your alignment. The world itself is a highlight. Jade Empire crafts a setting with haunted forests and villages that truly feel lived in. Some spooky temple sort of stuff. It's vibrant and self-contained. It's not an open world, but its zones are rich with side quests, helping townsfolk, settling disputes, exorcising demons, or fighting in the celestial arena. All of these things are important in this world. The tone shifts back and forth from dramatic to playful with BioWare's signature storytelling quirks. It has some wild side characters, philosophical dilemmas, and twists that reframe your entire mission and, likely, your mindset. Visually speaking, Jade Empire pushed the Xbox well, and I can see why. Playing this on the PC on Game Pass with the graphics cranked up, the textures and everything look pretty fantastic. Now granted, I'm playing an anniversary edition of the game, which explains why my gameplay looks so lovely compared to the original. Still, the game had fluid animations and art direction that embraced mythic flair over realism, and I love that about it. The soundtrack, composed by Jack Wall, is traditional instrumentation with ambient tones. These match the game's balance of mysticism and action. Voice acting, featuring talents like Nathan Fillion and John Cleese, add charming humor without undercutting the story's weight or being disrespectful, I think. Again, hillbilly from Appalachia, so whatever. If Jade Empire falls short anywhere, it's likely in the length. The game is more compact than KOTOR or Mass Effect, and the final act moves rapidly toward conclusion. Still, the brevity, the shortness of it works in its favor. There's very little filler, and the pacing keeps momentum strong. I would much rather have a powerful, cohesive, focused story than more hours for the sake of more hours. So no complaint here. Based on what I've seen so far, Jade Empire is sort of a quintessential RPG for Xbox. It really showcased what BioWare could do. And really, when it comes down to it, I think it foreshadowed the success that they'd enjoy on the next generation of consoles. Before we continue, let me remind you that I'm on a quest to play every single RPG. Will I get there? Probably not. But I'm sharing my experience with you along the way. If you've made it this far, I want you to know that I appreciate you, friend. If this is your cup of tea, then I have a lot of videos like this about other RPGs on other consoles. Consider checking those out, and if you like the content, consider subscribing. That way you don't miss future videos. And if you really want to further support the channel, because this is already incredible support anyway, just watching this video, thank you again. You might consider the Patreon, where there's some weird tier things going on there that you might like. You might think it's weird, but you should check it out. It's neat. I'll put it in the description. Either way, know that I appreciate your patronage in whatever form. Thank you so much. And of course, a big shout out to Nick LaRosa, Thomas, McQuack, Tangled String, all for being supporters of the channel, and of course to Lee, who is a champion bro. Thank you guys for your support. Let's continue. Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. Haha, there it is. People have been on to me to play KOTOR for years now. Now, it's the 4th on my list here, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I just had some really good games in the beginning. I've owned KOTOR physically for years, and I even had a friend buy me the Steam game years ago, but I never got around to it until now. I do enjoy Star Wars and the world of Star Wars, but I'm a casual fan at best. I've seen all the movies, I went to the premieres, I enjoyed all the movies, some to less degrees, but I don't really hate any of the movies. So that might give you some context about where I am in the fandom. Please don't hate me for not hating Star Wars. So BioWare, the same folks who would go on to make Mass Effect, developed a Star Wars role-playing video game, and this is it. BioWare managed to take the Star Wars universe back thousands of years before the movies and give players the keys to shape their own legend. And folks seem to absolutely love it. You begin as a seemingly ordinary Republic soldier caught in the aftermath of a Sith attack. From there, the game slowly peels back layers of mystery about your character's past, loyalties, and ultimate destiny. Character creation lets you choose your class and customize your appearance, but the real role-playing kicks in once you're loose in the galaxy and making decisions that pull you toward the light or push you toward the dark side. The morality system, built on BioWare's D&D inspired alignment roots, felt revolutionary at the time. Dialogue choices affect how people talk to you. They affect your force powers, influence companion relationships. And change the tone of your character's arc. The choices are really the crux of the game, and it's some serious role-playing. You could be a noble defender of peace, a manipulative Sith jockeying for power, or something a little more morally gray. The consequences weren't subtle, maybe a little more than Fable's halos and horns, but they were impactful, and for many players, this was the first time they felt like their Star Wars fantasy truly belonged to them, and not that they were just driving a robot's skin like their favorite movie characters. Combat blended turn-based D20 mechanics with real-time presentation, giving a little more action than I anticipated, but it's also running dice rolls behind the scenes and pausing the action along the way. It's kind of a mix between action and turn-based. Everything is divided into rounds. Once you engage in a fight, you're part of the round, much like D&D. You can accomplish a specific amount of things per turn, much like, again, you would do in 3rd edition D&D, which this is based on. Move, take a potion, slash a dude up, throw a grenade, whatever. Lightsaber duels, force powers, and blaster battles all have tactical depth based around this concept, but it still manages to keep decent pacing in battles to keep it from getting boring. You pause to queue abilities, swap between party members, and balance your build around skills, feats, and powers that you've unlocked over time. It was a satisfying mix of accessibility and customization that worked shockingly well on a controller, blending a little action with a little strategy. Very little action, but more than a menu choice. Companions are a huge part of KOTOR's appeal. You can have up to 2 companions with you, making it a party of 3. In the point that I played, I appreciated having my 1 companion, but in looking into other gameplay that's further along and gathering some information on the game, it's clear how important this really is. Even in the opening hours, the game seems to build a cast that feels alive through banter, conversation, and moral debates. Companions can be controlled by the player, or they can be set to do their own things automatically, which is typically what I want because I don't want to have to manage 2 more people when I'm trying to roleplay this one. Still, having them along for story and dialogue is a great addition to the game. It's smart. KOTOR has a pretty wild story actually. The journey starts with your character that you design yourself on a ship. You're confronted by a Sith Lord, you escape, wreck, and you're left to pick up the pieces and try to figure out what you don't remember basically. Much of the game is this path of discovery. The journey takes you to the Jedi Academy and then to several different planets looking for the source of a growing military. I haven't experienced most of this myself, but this is my understanding from a little research, as this game is apparently pretty long. And then it can be even longer if you want to be a completionist about it. There's a huge twist in the end, which was a spoiler for me. I looked it up, but whatever. It didn't spoil it as much for me as it encouraged me to keep playing the game. It sounds awesome. Please, no spoilers in the comments, obviously. Some people might still want to play this. It's apparently one of those what have I done sort of moments. It's rare that a game earns a twist like that, but BioWare tied it directly to player choice and agency and made it feel personal rather than gimmicky. Good job. That's good writing. From a technical standpoint, the game is pretty impressive. While the models and environments are certainly showing their age, at the time, I bet it was pretty impressive. I remember seeing it and thinking, hey, this looks really cool, but the best thing for me, I think, is the cinematic framing, and that, of course, familiar feeling soundtrack. The alien voice work and fully voiced dialogue are absolutely great. I really love the commitment to the alien voices. I marveled at it quite a few times. They could have settled for something considerably easier there, but instead we get this. I agree, buddy. Looking back, I get it. Knights of the Old Republic is considered one of the best Star Wars games of all time, one of the best Xbox games of all time, and of course one of the best RPGs of all time. It certainly is a role-playing game, and I think that's likely the appeal. If you have even a passing interest in Star Wars, maybe this game's for you. It can give you the opportunity to live in a world and experience a time long since passed before the first films, and it gives you the opportunity to play a role in that world. Hey, it's BioWare, and it's Star Wars, and it's quality, and it's one of the most influential RPGs ever made. It helps set the tone for BioWare's later hits like Mass Effect, and it breathes some new life into the Star Wars franchise. Its mix of moral choices, party dynamics, and world building made players feel like they were just placed in the middle of the Star Wars universe to interact, not just as a visitor, but as a character in a film affecting the world around them, not just visiting it. And that's probably why it's so loved. Again, KOTOR's extremely solid. I had some frustrations trying to get the PC version to record. It was kind of a nightmare. And I completely forgot that I actually owned the game physically. Doy. I do want to point out that, in the list, the best to the worst, the way I frame this next game is not good. It is no bueno. Or I should say, I didn't enjoy it very much at all. However, all the other games above this, KOTOR and above, awesome. Good stuff. Would definitely play and would suggest others play. This next game, I have trouble recommending. Oh gosh, I even hesitate to stick these next to each other. Nothing to it but to do it. Sudeki. I'm generally pretty positive about games. If you've been watching my videos, you understand this. But folks, I really struggled to enjoy this one. Sudeki was an investment after the initial concept from Microsoft in order to service the lack of RPG experiences on the Xbox. The initial start and continued completion was all by Climax Studios though. The promise was flashy combat, party-based storytelling, and a colorful world blending Western fantasy with anime-inspired aesthetics. It sold rather poorly by today's standards, but it wasn't miserably bad for the Xbox numbers. And despite not hitting that blockbuster success, it managed to garner a fan base as I hear as many people recommend this RPG as those who do not. I do not. My understanding is that the world is 3 different parts: a light world, a dark world, and the world in between. And there's this ancient cosmic threat or rivalry or something that's looming overhead. You follow a party of 4 heroes: Tal, a swordsman; Alush, a mage; Buki, a tiger woman warrior; and Elko, a gadget-armed thing scientist. Each character feels pretty distinct, even to the point that 2 of the characters go into a first-person mode to fight. The interplay between magic, tech, and mysticism is an interesting mix. The narrative, though, relies on familiar tropes like general good versus evil, mysterious gods, destiny, some random prophecies, it's good stuff, but nothing particularly unique if you've played any handfuls of Nothing particularly unique if you've played any handful of RPGs. In a good game, tropes are fine for me. In a bad game, The most notable thing, I think, is the gameplay. It's an action RPG and each character controls differently. Tal and Buki use melee combos reminiscent of early action-adventure games, while Alush and Elko, again, switch to first-person aiming for spells and ranged attacks. You can swap seamlessly between party members mid-battle, allowing for your own customized tactics. As an example, you could stun enemies with magic and then jack them up with some blades. The system is different enough to be notable for the time, but it sort of pales in comparison to other games since then. I know that's unfair to compare it to, but I just want to point out that this is pretty commonplace stuff now. I bet in 2004 it felt pretty cool though, so there's that. Exploration is pretty linear, taking you through towns and dungeons. Side quests, of course, and optional chests give players a few diversions, but beyond that, if linearity bothers you, you might avoid this one. The character customization regarding growth is pretty enjoyable. Skill trees and equipment upgrades give each character some fun customization. It's all streamlined, but it feels satisfying to invest in abilities on your journey. I guess in part of trying to get folks into RPGs on the Xbox, it seems to choose accessibility over complexity, and depending on your expectations or experience, it can feel either refreshing or shallow. Sudeki was a showcase for the graphics, or it was intended to be. I can see that. Character models for the time are detailed, environments are bright and stylized, and spell effects had a glossy, almost Dreamcast-like charm. It's not bad. The game used a mix of Western fantasy setup and anime designs, creating a setting that stood out in an era dominated by muddy realism or Tolkien clones. Even today, its art direction holds up better than you'd expect. I mean, it's not the prettiest game now, but you can probably still see how this was impressive for the time. I think the colors are particularly neat. I remember being attracted to this game back in the day, despite not playing it. It was simply because the game was so colorful looking among so many drab first-person shooter games. The voice acting, whew, good grief. I'm not crazy about it. Apparently some people enjoyed it. I thought it was jarring. But I guess it was an earnest attempt from the actors, and so I should respect that. I mean, whew, listen to this.
For I'm about to change your lives forever. I'm gonna make men of you if it's the last thing I do.
Maybe it was just poorly written dialogue too, I don't know. The soundtrack is sort of neat, blending some mid-2000s sort of synth and dance music, but it still retains some fantasy stylings. While nothing reaches the iconic heights of genre giants, Sudeki works, it's fine. I actually actively asked in Discord what people saw in Sudeki, and the response was not very positive, so thank you guys for sharing that in the Discord. Where the game struggles most, to me, is scope and the general story, as far as I can tell. The campaign can be finished in about 11 hours, which is pretty short for an RPG. Now, this concept boggles me because when I was reading about the plot synopsis, I fell asleep 4 or 5 times, literally, no joke, trying to get through it. It seems so convoluted to be an 11-hour game. I can't say I've experienced more than a few hours for myself, but none of the plot seemed particularly compelling to me. A common criticism that I've seen regarding the game is that just when the story seems to really escalate and get to that point, it just ends. Several plot threads feel a bit undercooked, and that can certainly be underwhelming. This isn't a game that I think I'll be revisiting anytime soon. Still, Sudeki fills the gap in the console's library by offering a bright, fast, RPG-light experience with a distinct identity. And I can appreciate it for that, but it's mostly, I think I'll appreciate it from a distance. If you think I didn't give the game a fair shake and that I should continue to play it, please let me know. Maybe I'm missing something, but then again, maybe I'm not.